Good evening, and welcome to our 294th step in our walking tour through the Bible. And today I want to finish off the book of Ezekiel, and in particular, I want to focus on chapter 47. Now, chapter 47 is well known to everyone. It is the Vidi Aquam. I saw water flowing from the side of the temple. Um, I'll just read it to you. It's a very short passage, really. So, he brought me back to the entrance of the temple, where a stream flowed eastwards from under the temple threshold, for the temple faced east. The water flowed from under the right side of the temple, south of the altar. He took me out by the north gate and led me right round outside as far as the outer east gate, where the water flowed out on the right-hand side. The man went off to the east, holding his measuring line, and measured off 1,000 cubits. He then made me wade across the stream. The water reached my ankles. He measured off another 1,000 cubits and made me wade across the stream again. The water reached my knees. He measured off another 1,000 cubits and made me wade across off another 1,000. It was now a river to which I could not cross. The stream had swollen and was now deep water, a river impossible to cross. He then said, "Do you see, Son of Man?" He took me and brought me back to the bank of the river. Now, when I reached it, I saw an enormous number of trees on each side on each bank of the river. He said, "The water flows down east to the Arabah," that's the depression around the Dead Sea, "and to the sea. And flowing into the sea, that's the Dead Sea, it makes its waters wholesome. Wherever the river flows, all living creatures teeming in it will live. Fish will be very plentiful." They don't live in the Dead Sea, by the way. That's why it's called the Dead Sea. "There will be fishermen on its bank. Fishing nets will be spread from En Gedi to En Eglaim. The species of fish will be the same as for the fish of the Great Sea, the Mediterranean. The marshes and the lagoons, however, will remain salt. Along the river on either bank will grow every kind of fruit tree with leaves that never wither and fruit that never fails. They will bear new fruit every month because this water comes from the sanctuary, and their fruit will be good to eat and their leaves medicinal." Okay, so this is a beautiful vision, a river coming out of the temple. It starts as a small stream, it grows into a mighty river, flowing out into the desert, into the most inhospitable terrain on earth, more or less, down into the depression that lies way below Jerusalem and towards the Dead Sea, and bringing life wherever it goes. And on the banks, trees spring up, which are full of fruit, fish flourish, and men are happy, basically. There's fruit to eat, there's fish to eat, and so on. And the river brings life, and its leaves of the plants growing by the river are medicinal because this water comes from the temple. Now, if we just go back a bit, the guy who is showing this to Ezekiel is this sort of angel who is acting as who is the architect of the new temple. In the 25th year of our captivity, says Ezekiel in chapter 40, verse 1, he has this vision of what the next temple is going to be like. Now, this is a prophet actually making a prophecy. The temple has been destroyed, the temple no longer exists. The second temple is yet to come. Ezekiel is prophesying what the second temple is going to be like, and he gives an exact picture, exact dimensions of what the temple is going to be about. So the outer wall, the east gate, the outer court, the north gate, the south gate. There are lots of rather dull, frankly, architectural details, which go on for 7 chapters. And then at the end, when God is installed, God has returned to his temple, when the temple worship begins again, when the temple is restored through divine intervention, because it is God who is building this temple rather than human beings. And when the land of Israel is restored with the temple in its center, with the temple at Jerusalem, which is the navel of the world, then this water will come forth, showing that the temple is the source of life, of happiness, and of delight to God's people. So, if the worship in the temple is restored properly in accordance with God's will, then everything will be fine. The kingdom of God will be restored. Everybody will be happy. Abundance will flow from the temple. This is rather a troubling prophecy for us Christians, because it's telling us this one thing, which I think many of us don't want to hear: the preeminence of the worship of God above all else, the preeminence of the liturgy above all else, the preeminence of the holy place above all else. We have to have the liturgy, we have to have the holy place, and we have to have the worship of God at the center of our life. It has to be the one thing we do. Everything else will flow from that. Now, I suppose those who are very concerned about climate change, and like myself, who are very concerned about the growth of deserts in the world, will rejoice at the thought of water flowing through the deserts and the deserts turning to greenery and forests and rivers and fish and so on, and fruit and medicinal leaves. What could be better? Streams in the desert. It's a lovely idea. And indeed, when we consider in Australia, a very, very dry country, they're able to grow all sorts of lovely things because they've got artesian wells. And in Israel, the modern state of Israel, they're able to grow all sorts of lovely things because they've invented all sorts of ways of irrigating the desert. Okay, we're all in favor of irrigation. Fine. But that's not what this is about. The source of all goodness is the temple, the worship of God, the presence of God in the midst of his people. So no matter how much you talk about climate change, no matter how much indeed you talk about morality, no matter how much indeed you talk about the necessity of peace in the world, all of which are good things, obviously, unless you make God the center of your discourse, nothing is really going to happen. You're just going to be a cymbal tinkling or a gong booming. The center of everything has got to be the presence of God, the worship of God, the holy place. So our mission, and it's the mission of the prophet Ezekiel, one that he didn't live to see fulfilled, is to restore the holiness of the holy place. The holiness of the holy place is central. Everybody in the entire country lives in some sort of parish, geographically. And in that parish is a holy place. And in that church, the holy place is the Holy of Holies, the tabernacle. Unless we return to the centrality of the Eucharist, the centrality of God dwelling among us, we're wasting our time. We must make that our number one priority, the restoration of the holy. And if we do that, everything else will follow. Now that's enough of Ezekiel. It's a very long prophet. My goodness, next page I can see Daniel. That also will be exciting. All the very best. Bye.